Okay. Hi, everybody who joined right on time. Thank you for being here. I'm seeing everyone file in. We're very excited to start today's session. I tried my best to get music going, but I just didn't pull it off today. So our next conversation, everyone's going to get music as we are getting started and jumping in. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the session. We're going to go through a little bit of housekeeping and just rules for the session as we see everyone joining here today. We'll do some intros. We'll make sure everyone has the opportunity to talk through QR codes, creativity with QR codes, and most importantly, chat with each other about use cases that you're seeing and you're using in your day-to-day. We are just here to facilitate that conversation, talk a little bit about what we see and what we hear from customers, and share some inspiration with you. So thank you everyone for joining. We are very excited for the session. We've got a lot of content to cover. We've also got a lot of questions that we want to get to. So we'll make sure that this feels as interactive as possible. All right. We are a minute in. More and more people are joining, but we're going to get right into the housekeeping stuff so Juan and I can chat a little bit about what we're seeing with QR codes. So first of all, before I do intros, here's some rules of the road for our session today. And this really is for all of our customer conversations. If you joined us in our July one, where we talked about the QR code data report, this looks familiar. If this is your first time joining us, these are the things that we'll come back to every time for making these conversations really productive. First of all, this is a conversation. This isn't meant to be a presentation. This isn't meant to be Pawan and I just chatting with you or talking at you about the things that we're seeing. This is meant to be for all of us to share and talk together. And so we encourage you all to do that. My first challenge, if you can, hop into the webinar chat feature and share who you are, where you're calling in from, and kind of your biggest QR code question, because that will help get everybody ready to have the conversation for us to dive into some Q&A. So if you can, jump in there. Hi, Risa. Thank you for being here. So excited to see you. Let everyone else chime in as well. As y'all are doing that, I'll share the other rules of the road. We are going to record and share these resources. I know we get that question a lot, so make sure that you are paying as attention and being engaged in the chat as possible, because we want to make sure that we're able to do for you all is provide you information and allow you to go back to it after the fact. So tomorrow around midday Central Time in the US, we will be sending out the recording and resource to you all, so you can make sure that you can stay in note-taking mode and idea mode with each other. Awesome. Seeing a ton of people from across the states, from across the world, from different time zones. This is awesome. Thank you everyone for chiming in here. And you can choose to chat with everyone, or you can choose to chat with hosts and panelists. So as you're looking to the chat and you see the two, you can select the drop down and choose a different option if you like to talk to all of the attendees today. Final rule of the road is we want to answer your questions. We got a lot of questions submitted before the session started. Super excited to be able to address some of those as we go. But we also know that we'll have some questions on the things that we'll talk through, and you all can share ideas. So we encourage you to use the Q&A tab and panel so we can track the questions that come through. So if you do have any questions you want us to address live, make sure you drop it in there. We know there's going to be a ton of questions. We'll answer as many as we can. But just as a follow-up for you all, we'll make sure that we send out the resources and we send out answers to the questions that we didn't get to after the fact. So have no fear. If you ask a question, it doesn't get answered, you're going to get an answer. It just may not be live on the session. So please make sure you submit any and all questions that you have for us here. All right, let's jump in to our session. So without further ado, who are we? Sitting here talking to you. My name is Luke Reinebo. I use the pronouns he and him, and I work on the community efforts here at Bitly. I am about 4 months in, and I've spent the last 4 months talking to customers day in and day out to understand what they want more of, what they could use more of from us. And so super excited to be able to share some of those with you today. And I'm joined by Pawan. Pawan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Hey guys, I'm Pawan. I'm a product manager at Bitly, specifically for the QR codes, which is obviously the best QR codes platform on the internet right now. And I also love speaking to customers and users and understanding our use cases so that we can build better QR code products for you.
Love it. Amazing. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing all of your insights. I know in our sessions, as we were digging into what questions we wanted to answer from the ones that were submitted, you just had so many different insights and so many examples. So excited to get into it. Thank you, everybody, for hopping into the chat and chatting with each other, introducing yourselves. Keep that going throughout today's session. All right, let's get into a little bit about the topic today. So we're talking about the explosion of creativity with QR codes. I've seen a little bit actually in the questions and in the chat. Folks are talking about how QR codes feel like they had a big big bump in surge when in 2020, when folks were living and working more remotely, when we are doing a lot more no contact experiences. And a lot of us saw them in restaurants. We saw them for menus. We saw them in those places where we went from having direct connection engagement with folks to having more digital experiences. Then it feels like it took a lull, and they're coming back. Now, we're here to tell you that they've kind of never really gone away. They've been innovated on a lot, and we've seen a lot of adoption of QR codes across a lot of different industries that are outside of just restaurants and outside of just menus. And so we'll talk about a little bit about those in a while, but I want to highlight the different places that we're seeing QR code creativity. And the first one really is about creativity of how QR codes are delivered. So Juan, do you want to talk about a couple of things that we're seeing kind of like in the ecosystem of what are the most creative ways that people are creating QR codes?
Yeah, for sure. So lately, obviously, AI has been a really big thing. I'm sure most of you might know about ChatGPT and all of its tools and capabilities. So one thing similar to ChatGPT is now there is a platform called Stable Diffusion where you can go in and upload an image and you will get a QR code like this, which is super cool. And it'll have a design, it'll be display whatever the image as the background that you want, and you can still share it out as a QR code. And this is completely scannable. So if you were to scan this right now, it will take you to your desired destination of whoever made it. So that's one really cool example for this. And the other cool examples we're seeing is especially with things like drones and lighting. We definitely have the capability in technology today to fly a lot of drones into the air and create a QR code in the sky. So I think this was done pretty recently in China and Dubai. And that's another really cool application of QR codes where if you're outside and there's a huge amount of people, you could potentially guide a lot of drones up in the sky and create a QR code for them to experience something or guide them to another experience or anything like that. So those are some really cool use cases that we have come across and we've been keeping an eye on and seeing how we can improve our QR code experience and make it better for you.
Juan, I'll let you answer how you want to, but we had a question in the chat if QR code art is available in Bitly right now.
Yeah, great question. So right now, this kind of QR code art isn't available in Bitly yet, but we're definitely looking into it and seeing how we can get it out to you all.
Love that answer. Cool. The thing that you highlighted there, so obviously drones are not something,
right.
And a bunch of drones are not something that we all have access to all the time. Creating QR code art might not be something that we want to be able to do within our current tech stack, and maybe it doesn't fit with our audience. And so one thing that you shared with me as we started to chat with this of like what makes QR codes stand out outside of the really big examples that we see, like QR code art generated by AI and drones. So can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing from customization or branding or whatever it might be, and what makes QR codes stand out and be creative outside of art and drones?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing for me is understanding what everyone here is using QR codes for and making sure that whenever you take it outside to a billboard or a flyer, or maybe your school board meetings to pay somewhere, to make sure that it's fully scannable and completely visible. So from that end, we're making sure that the QR codes that we provide are extremely clear and high quality so that everyone can scan it. And our QR codes are unique in that even if a part of it is torn off, you can still scan it and it'll take you to the right destination. And a couple of other things that we're seeing is making sure that if you do want it to stand out, using your brand colors or using your personal branding or anything that you use for your company or personal business so that you can differentiate from the other QR codes that are out there. And for the most part, we're still seeing black and white QR codes, and that's really great to see, but it would also be awesome to see users use their personal branding because that helps the QR code stand out and potentially draw more eyes to it in a crowded field of QR codes. So things like color, things like logos, adding various colors to it, different gradients of colors, as long as they're all scannable and it's super visible, it'd be super awesome to see all those out there and making sure that your QR code stands out and you can get the attention that you need.
Yeah. One thing I love that you talked about throughout that was you mentioned a lot of different ways that folks can customize the QR codes themselves,
Right.
in low lift ways, right? We change colors, we change the
Right.
gradient, we can change the design, we can even add our logo to the middle of them. We can do things around the edges to make sure people know what they get when they scan. We'll talk about that in a second. But one question that we had before the session started was around ensuring that there's more security and there's more trust that comes with things like QR codes. And it feels like there's a lot of lessons that we've learned at Bitly around short links and how Bitly short links make a lot of links feel more credible, more trusted, that folks can click on links that are also easier to read and easier to track. And QR codes is a very similar world, right? We want to make sure that there's a level of trust that people get when they see the QR code, that if they scan it, it's going to take them to a great experience that the brand created for them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. To expand on that, right now our QR codes are powered by Bitly links, so you can feel safe and trusted knowing every time you create a QR code in the Bitly platform, it is a link that goes to a safe and secure website. But something we're also thinking about in the future is adding some kind of branding so that users know that this is a Bitly link. And if you're sharing it out there with anyone, they can know that this is a Bitly branded QR code and it's safe and goes to a secure destination. And you don't need to worry about getting scammed in any way or anything like that.
Yeah, it's a great point. We had a question coming from Andy. He was wondering, just out of interest, what percentage of a QR code has to be visible for it to work? You mentioned creating it customizable, make sure that can still scan. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. So we provide the highest error correction QR codes. So there are a couple of different error corrections out there. I'm currently can't remember off the top of my head, but one we provide is the highest. So for that, even if let's say 30% of the QR code is faded or torn off, our QR codes should still be able to be scanned.
Yeah, love that. Daniel mentioned in the chat that they maybe don't want Bitly branding because they have their own branding with Bitly powering the link. That's the beauty of customization too, is you can have a logo or not, you put your own logo in it as well, right?
100%. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Let's keep moving because I want to get into the other side of creativity with QR codes. So our takeaway here and what we've seen from customers, what we've seen in the data is that making sure QR codes are able to stand out is really about making sure that they seem credible, that someone wants to actually scan it. So they're compelling. The reason to scan is either out of interest or because they trust where it's taking them. And then it's clear. What should I do in order to scan it and where does it take me? So I know my next action and not just dropped in the middle of just maybe your website homepage. Take me to a specific page, take me to a specific experience. The other side is around making sure that QR codes, and we are using creative ways and how they work. We're taking our customers, our audiences to experiences where they can do actually a lot more. One thing, Pawan, that you have mentioned when we chatted about this before is this gets into the conversion post-scan of a QR code. So do you mind talking a little bit about how you think about what happens after scanning a QR code? And what makes the experience really creative or compelling for your audience, and that if they come back into your store or come back to your business, they're going to want to scan again because they got something great out of the experience.
Yeah, that's a great point you make. So one thing we're looking into and something I want to implement for our QR codes is how we can make the end-to-end experience better for all of you. So a lot of you might be working in marketing or influencing, or you might have your own product or have a small business. So for all of these things, it's great that you're going to a destination for a QR code. Wouldn't it be even better if you could find out how many people bought the product that you created a QR code for? Or wouldn't it be great if you could find out if the sign up link that you created a QR code for, you now actually know how many people signed up out of that link? So those are some of the really cool things that we're looking into implementing and understanding how you guys might need QR codes for, that we want to implement and see how we can give you a full, better end-to-end experience, not only for scanning and telling you how many scans it gets, because everyone on the internet can do that, but understanding what happens to your users after the scan. So if they go to a website, can we tell you how many clicks they're getting, things like that. So that's something really cool that we're looking into and hoping to get it out.
Yeah. I love that example because it talks a lot about the way that we can think about QR codes not as an after the fact like thing. And for those of you who've maybe been in creating marketing materials or really any creative materials over the last couple of years, you've probably been asked before, like, hey, can we put a QR code on this? And I actually heard from a lot of customers I've chatted with that at that first glance, it feels like the thing you add to the design when you're almost done with it. But thinking about the QR code and the destination that you want to send people to, what experience they're going to have, and then being able to track the analytics of who is scanning, from where are they scanning, which QR codes within your store or within your experience are they scanning, that tells you a lot more about the customer experience, right?
Yep, definitely. We want to know how your users are using your QR code so that we can provide you better data to help you market or plan ahead for your business better.
Love it. Awesome. We had a couple questions that came through that I want to get to before we go into some of our how-tos and answering some of the questions that were submitted ahead of time. So Susan would like to know, is there any media we should not use QR codes in? Seems wrong to use QR codes in an email or on a website. So let's talk about the common question of should QR codes go into emails or should they go on websites? Juan, do you have a take there?
Yeah, I definitely agree that if you can think of any idea or any location like emails or newsletters or anything you're sending out via phone, or you think one of your users might open the QR code on a phone, then it obviously doesn't make sense for you to be sending it in that medium. So great things is like emails. We can say with good probability that someone is mostly checking their emails on their phone these days, and they might not have a laptop nearby to check it. So in that case, if someone is opening an email on their phone, it's great that you're sending them a QR code, but it's a good chance that they won't be able to scan it. So one cool thing that iOS and Android currently has, and I don't know if you guys know about this, is if you save that QR code image and long hold on it, you can still go to that destination. But not a lot of people know that. So it would be better for us to not send QR codes via Instagram or via Facebook or email, all these platforms where people are mostly going on their mobile devices. And I'm assuming no one has two phones to scan their QR codes. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it's something we hear often. And this goes into planning out how you want to make the QR code experience really, really compelling and clear for your audience. And we're going to talk about some instructions for folks who aren't clear about how to use QR codes in a second. That being said, Juan, I think you hit on a really important point. So where and how are we putting these QR codes and how are they being delivered? And then what do we want to happen? So we probably often see QR codes in emails we get for like ticket stubs to be scanned at the movie theaters. We see them come through in our like boarding pass emails from airlines. Those are great experiences where I'm holding up my phone to be scanned. And we see those sometimes and say, oh, maybe we should be using QR codes in emails. If the experience is meant where the phone is turning into a way that two people can connect, maybe it's a great fit. If you are looking to have people scan the QR code in a place where they're using their phone, then maybe it's not the best experience to have it based in an email, put on social media, those types of things. But really that comes back to planning out what's going to be the experience that you have with your QR code. Is it in person? Is it digital? And how might people scan it? Now, you're going to see throughout this presentation, we are using QR codes in digital experiences. Some of the QR codes throughout today's session are scannable. We want you to, because it's going to take you to a new experience. So digital signage is a great place to include QR codes where people can scan, whether in your location, they're in an office, you're presenting at a conference, so they can get the follow-up resources that you want to share. If you work at a nonprofit and you are running a charity auction or some sort of event, and you want people who are there to really see more about the story of the cause that you're driving toward, you can have those on, again, digital signage so people can scan and have information after the fact. It's all about finding the right place for the QR code that actually enhances the experience, which sounds like common sense, but I think often can be easier said than done unless you're planning out that experience ahead of time.
Yeah.
Let's jump into some questions. So Christian had asked if Christian, share it. Actually, this is a great situation. So living in a rural community, we have a big population of retirees that receive our marketing materials. When they do, we generally get a lot of pushback from them when it comes to using QR codes. They don't understand or like them. Any advice? And I would say this probably applies to a lot of folks who aren't used to adopting this technology, or they don't really know why someone's asking them to scan something in order to get more information. So kind of comes back to being clear and being compelling. But Juan, any advice that you have for folks that maybe are using QR codes with audiences that aren't as used to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I would definitely try to introduce them to maybe links first, whereas I'm not sure how well versed they are with technology and how much they're using technology and what kind of material that needs to be presented to them. So that would all be great in knowing before we do anything. But maybe introducing them to links, not even short links, if they're completely technologically against using technology, I guess we would maybe introduce them to like going on URLs and then introducing them to bit.ly links and then eventually QR codes. So it could be like a work in process. Yeah, if it just depends on what kind of material you want to help them get information on and how we can provide that material to them.
Yeah, I think there's a great point. One thing I've seen in some co-working spaces, to your point, Juan, is I've seen a QR code and then a bit.ly short link next to it. So folks can, if they're passing, can type that in when they're at their computer, but if they want it on their phone, they can do the scan. A similar thing could probably work for audiences that aren't used to it, where you can have instructions of how to scan or what that QR code actually is. But for folks that maybe don't have a smartphone where they can scan it, or they're not used to it, you've got that short link that's a lot clearer too.
Right. Definitely.
Awesome. Cool. All right, let's jump into our next section of today, and keep the questions coming because we're actually going to be hitting on them when we dive deep into some real use cases that you all submitted and talk about how we use QR codes within them. So we're going to go through, talk about these. I would encourage everybody, share any other questions that you have in the Q&A tab and keep sharing with each other examples of way QR codes have been working with you within the chat feature. I've seen a lot of great ideas actually come through within this that people are sharing. So seeing people talking about putting it on signage that's used at events to drive leads. We've seen people talking in the chat about using QR codes within brand presentation materials. We talked about that a little bit in terms of the digital signage side, putting on t-shirts. Like there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with QR codes. So pretty awesome to see you all sharing, and please keep sharing those ideas and those insights. So the first question that we want to answer and dive into, and Juan, I'm actually going to tee this one up to you. We had someone submit ahead of time the use case of needing a geo redirect solution. So when someone scans a QR code in the US, it takes them to a different end destination than when someone scans it in France or somewhere else. How would you address that with a QR code?
Yeah, great question. So something we're working on bit.ly link side is understanding where our users are located and where their users are located. So if you have a small business where you have a global audience, you might want to send the people in Brazil to a specific product Brazil site and the people in Canada to a specific Canadian website. So understanding that and then working towards how we can understand where the users are coming from and directing them to the right destination is something we're also working with on the QR code side. So for everyone who's in small business or even influencers, where you're selling your product or marketing an experience or anything like that, and you have different experiences set up for different countries or locations, it will be awesome if you could send them to that respective location where maybe they understand it better in their language and are able to relate to it more. So it gives you a better return on investment for you.
Love that. That's great advice. And I highly recommend folks that are looking to have contextual experiences with their QR codes to look into this, because it can make sure that depending on geographic location, depending on language, depending on whether they have your mobile app or not, and you're sending them to the app, they're getting the right next step that we want them to take.
Exactly.
Love it. We had another question asking about needing to have a QR code linked to a map of of a neighborhood, and how can that be published on a website through WordPress. I think this is actually one I wanted to make sure that we highlight, because this is a really important way for people to think about how QR codes can drive to specific experiences within your website. So if this customer was creating let's say a Google map, and that was embedded into their website, into their WordPress site, which you can do, how do you make sure that that QR code is put in the right place? And so my recommendation for this one is, one, this is possible. Two, and I'll show folks actually how to create a short link and a QR code when we go through our Canva demo in a second. Before we do that, though, make sure that you got the link to this exact page that you want to send people to, and then including it in your marketing materials is the best way to create context around it. And so for this example, I would recommend to people, you have a call to action or clear instructions on whatever printed material that you have of what that map to the neighborhood offers. Does it offer more information around what activities to do in the neighborhood? Does it have a live link to a bunch of different restaurants, or it's deep linking to a specific Google Maps filter that you have on? Is it just giving like directions or a lay of the land of what the neighborhood is all about? All of those things are going to be important for how you frame up the QR code itself. And so I want to talk about this one because this is a great example of, it's not just about the QR code and driving it to a specific link, which you can do. It is a lot more about what is the experience that you're creating on the QR code on the front end. So highly recommend that everyone continue to think about that portion before they dive in and create QR codes. How am I presenting it, and where is it going to, and what's the experience that people are going to have? Awesome. A lot of great questions continue to come through. Please continue to share them. We will get to some Q&A in the back half of our conversation here today. So make sure you keep those coming. So I want to talk about a couple different examples of how people are using QR codes. And Juan, I'll tee it up to you as I go through these to weigh in and kind of share your expertise on this as well. But what I want to talk about is really QR codes in action. So let's get specific of different ways that we've seen people use QR codes in really compelling ways. These are based on some of the questions and the use cases submitted to us beforehand. So we want to make sure that we're answering the questions that folks had and they asked before we hopped on. So the first one is all about offering your audience a closer connection with you and your mission. And so how do you make sure you're taking advantage of those in-person experiences, or those experiences where you're able to put printed materials or digital signage in front of your users and your audience? And what can you do more for that audience? One thing I like to think about of ways you can get creative is, how can you surprise your customers in ways that they can do more when they attend an event, or they can do more when they come to your food truck, as you can see here, or they can take one more action or get a discount because they came in store and there's a specific QR code that's located there. And so making sure that you're using QR codes in ways that are maybe unexpected for your audience, to actually drive more connection with them, to drive them to download your app, to drive them to register for a discount or a coupon code, to have them find out more information about products and services that you have, is a great way to do it. I was having a conversation with a customer recently that works within a library, and they've got tons of ebooks, of audiobooks, of a bunch of digital assets that they can't possibly offer as a catalog in person. But that doesn't mean it's not available to their patrons. And so what they did is they actually took a QR code and put it throughout the library for people to be able to scan to find the full digital inventory of everything that they get. What that allowed them to do is to have a smaller inventory within the library itself, but also make sure people are clear of, if I want to find more books like that, I can scan this QR code and find books that are in this genre, that are in this format, that are also available to me. So it's taking that in-person experience, or that connection point that you have with your customers, and making it even broader and bigger for them in a way that you can't always do in person or in store. We've got some examples of ways that you can use Bitly QR codes on the bottom here. So obviously making QR codes printable is important, customizing them, using digital QR codes as a follow-up or automated in your email campaign so people can scan when they're in location with you, whether it be to check in or whatever it is. And then having that scan data and analytics is really important as well. Juan, anything you'd add to this one, or any context you have of how people can create that kind of that closer connection via QR codes for the people that they're interacting with day to day?
Yeah, no, I think you covered everything for the most part. A lot of the use cases that I've seen is people wanting to understand who their audience is. So a great example in this case would be to collect feedback or lead them to a Google form where they can jot down more information about who they are. So that can help you do the job that you're going to do better, and potentially even sign up for a newsletter or anything that Luke already mentioned, where essentially you're getting more information about your user so that you can understand who they are and potentially put the QR code in a better place, or even target the QR code in such a way that you're only targeting to that specific user segment.
Yeah. I love what you just built on there in terms of making sure it's specific or using QR codes in different areas to understand
Right.
are people using them. I chatted with another customer recently that uses QR codes for cooking instructions on their product packaging, so they can make sure that if you're buying a pizza from that retail location, that at home, when you're unsure of what to put the oven at or how long to put it in, or probably more importantly, what maybe snacks to pair it with or what drink to pair that with, you have a dedicated live place that you can send your customers to where you can update that information, but you can also add more context and more of an experience around it too, that isn't just limited to the QR code itself. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the next one, Juan. So this is all about connecting your in-person, your digital experiences. I touched on this a little bit a second ago, but this example is really all about making sure that the folks that are expressing some interest have a way to connect with you for the first time. And so how can I make sure if someone's passing my food truck as an example, we've got a retail location, maybe they're passing a flyer for my nonprofit that I put up at a community organization, that I can find and take that information with me without having to get too invested, walk into the store or anything like that. And that helps us create more customers, but also helps us have our customers understand a little bit more about our brand. And so a couple ways that we've seen this used really effectively is, number one, kind of including nutritional information for products in your store. So let's say you have it on product packaging, you want to give nutritional information, recipe ideas, ways that people can use this product or this food in their day-to-day, all really great ways to use QR codes in that context. You can have it scanned to a list of upcoming benefits or events. We work with a lot of music venues that use QR codes to have an updated and ongoing list that lives on their website, so people can see maybe who's performing today or who's performing this weekend, all in a filtered space without having to go directly to your website or find your Instagram or whatever it might be. It can also show your full inventory of products and services. So let's say you offer a lot, or you want to have people understand what more you can do for them without them having to walk into your store to chat with someone, to go deep if they're not ready to. A QR code makes that connection point really, really easy. Juan, anything you'd add to that in terms of ways that people can use QR codes for that kind of first interaction that we have with customers?
Yeah, some of the other cool ways, and I think you touched on this briefly, is maybe providing them a virtual dressing room experience for like a clothing store or something. So maybe you, similar to how the Starbucks ad was able to show you kindness notes everywhere if you move around, you could potentially go have a user scan the QR code for the clothing that you're about to buy and see how that would look on you in like a virtual setting. So that would be an awesome thing to see before you buy, and you wouldn't even have to try it on, and that would be something cool. And similarly, a lot of things where Luke mentioned, it's understanding the value before you buy it, so you're not committed to it. So maybe you want to buy a new piece of cheese from the grocery store, but you're really not sure what it includes, and you know you have some dietary restrictions. So it'd be great to scan it and find out whether it meets all your needs. So things like that, where you're scanning the QR code and understanding the value of the product before you actually have to commit to buying the product.
Yeah,
so
I love that. And what you touched on there helps us all think about the two different ways that we've just covered that you can use QR codes. It can be the first impression that you create for your audience, for your customers, for your consumers, for your donors, for your students. I know we've got a lot of folks from educational institutions on today's session. There's ways that you can ease people in to experiencing your brand or your products and services using a QR code. And so they can kind of take their time in understanding how they can work with you, the value you provide. You can send them to specific pages, but you can also do on the post-event experience too. So let's say I do walk into your store, or I did enroll in the class. I can scan this and help enhance or add to what I'm doing with you in person via QR code. Before I become a customer, after I become a customer, two great places for us to use QR codes to help meet people where they're at, which is more and more digital and more on our phones and on our computers, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Very cool. One thing I want to touch on before we dive into some Q&A and before I walk through some ways that you can actually very easily create QR codes using our newest integration with Canva actually, is I want to just kind of give a high level view into the types of things that people shared with us of ways that they're using QR codes. So these are submitted by people who had registered for this session, people that we've talked to before in our interviews of ways that they're using QR codes. And I wanted to share this with you because it's a really quick hit list of ways that you can use this. So everything from following on social and your marketing materials, we see that a lot. We can use it in live or virtual presentations. You're going to see that from us in a second. You can direct right to a bit.ly link in bio page where you can continuously update promotions, news, events, the different things that they can digest. I saw in the chat people mentioned using QR codes on printed materials or in library content or in catalogs to actually drive to videos or more product descriptions or even audio versions of what's in the printed material itself. That's a great way to use QR codes in a way that you can update the content that's digital, but keep that printed asset done and finalized. We talked about augmented reality and trying it on and the clothing experience. There's a ton here, and it really spans across businesses and industries. So making sure that you're using QR codes in creative ways comes back to what are you trying to accomplish and what parts of your customer journey are you creating the QR code for? That being said, we do see some very common QR code use cases. And so I'll have a link and a QR code you can scan in one slide where you can get the full download of the QR code trends data report. I saw some folks chatting within the webinar chat here about adoption rates, about where QR codes are being used, best practices for scans, average scan rates, all that kind of stuff. We've got a lot of that information in our recently launched QR code data report, which you can dive into. But here are the three fastest growing QR experiences that we're seeing. The first is vCard Plus. So think about this as your kind of digital business card where you can enter in your information. People can scan. Great for networking, great for conferences, great for folks who are connected with people in day-to-day often, want to be able to send them to that digital experience that they have. Dynamic URLs, we've talked a little bit about this, and Puan, I'm going to ask you in a second to talk a bit more about how this feature really enables folks to do more with the URL in the back end. But being able to use a dynamic URL allows you to have that single QR code be redirected to different locations, either based on where folks are scanning from or what they're scanning on or the experience they already have on their phone, but also making sure you can update that link. Let's say you make an error. Let's say you need to point them to something new because your contest or promotion is in a new season. You want to update the experience. A QR code allows you to do that really easily because the same scanned QR code allows you to be redirected to a new experience based on context or based on updates that you make. So dynamic URLs are a really important piece of this. Juan, anything you'd add to that front?
Yeah, definitely. One thing I do want to touch on is the difference between static and dynamic QR codes. So as Luke mentioned, dynamic QR codes allow you to redirect QR codes as well as give you scan information. So anytime a user scans that QR code, you'll be able to see how many people are scanning it, and you'll be able to get that data. And the difference between that and static QR codes is that static QR codes, once you make them, you can't change them in any way. You can't change how they look. You also can't change the link behind them. So if your marketing or if your experience changes and you need to guide a user to a new destination, you won't be able to do that with a static QR code. And static QR codes also will not give you the scan information. So just something to keep in mind when you're creating QR codes. And we try and push our users towards using dynamic QR codes because obviously we want you to get the information. And if you make any mistakes, it's not a big deal for you to redirect the QR code to wherever you want it to go.
Yeah, I love that. It ties a little bit into something Rachel Decker had dropped into the chat. She said that her company helps clients use QR codes on the direct mail pieces that can bring recipients to a unique landing page, which again, you can update if you want to using dynamic URLs, while also providing a quantifiable method for attributing direct mail to a touch point. So think about all your different marketing activities, all the ways that you're driving your customers, your audience to the objectives you want, being able to use a QR code to go to specific pages, and then seeing what scan data looks like and how your different tactics are performing. That's a great example, Rachel. I love that one. The final one on our fastest growing QR code experiences is around feedback. So we talked a lot about how you can use QR codes to bring folks in and closer to your brand. We talked a lot about how you can surprise and delight customers with really unique experiences with QR codes. And then finally is around using QR codes for getting feedback. And so we see more and more folks are creating a QR code, are automating the send of a QR code to gather feedback from folks. This can be everything from getting really sophisticated where the QR codes are automatically printed on receipts or on invoices for people to give feedback. It can also be something you print and put at the point of sale, and you ask folks for feedback with a real quick and simple form. So getting feedback from customers via QR codes on the devices they already use, a great way for people to start using them pretty quickly without too much infrastructure around it. These are just a couple of the highlights. Like I mentioned, I saw a lot of questions and conversation around kind of stats, data trends around QR code usage, adoption, scans. I encourage you all to scan this because you can access the entire report and dive a little bit deeper into the data to actually get into how people are using QR codes a bit more. That being said, I want to talk about our final topic here, which is QR codes are exploding in the way that we're using them. QR codes are exploding in the way that we're actually creating them, but how do we put them into our materials and how do we factor them into our day-to-day? And so you may have seen we recently launched an integration with Canva, which we're pretty excited about because it's actually one of our most requested integrations we got from users and customers. And it allows us to do a lot more with QR codes because we can implement them and Bitly short links into more of your experiences. And so we talked a lot during today's session about the different ways that we can incorporate them. And oftentimes it sounds great, but when we go to actually do them, that's where we hit a wall. We're not really sure where to start, or we don't have a design built out just yet. And so what we want to do is do a quick live demo of how you might incorporate either a short link or a QR code into a Canva design. So you can do this in your day-to-day, whether if you're using Canva today, you can put it into practice by connecting your Bitly account, but also show how QR codes can show up seamlessly within the experiences that we already have. So that I'm going to show you a little bit. You can scan this QR code, or I'm going to practice what I preach here. You can go to this short URL if you don't want to scan with your phone or want to have it on your desktop to actually get a little bit more information from us on how you can use Canva and Bitly together. But I am going to dive into a live experience with how we do it with the design. Juan, as I'm pulling that up, anything that I missed when we talk about Canva using QR codes within our designs that you want to touch on?
No, I think everything you've been explaining so far sounds great.
Love it. Okay. And Savannah, thank you for dropping that link in the chat. I appreciate it. All right, everyone can see my Canva, right? Cool. Awesome. So we talked about a lot about food trucks. I'm going to create my own. Rumor has it that my black bean burgers aren't so bad. So I'm going to start a food truck where I drive around Chicago where I live and I have black bean burgers, a bunch of different flavors, a bunch of different types. It's going to be great. I'm going to start my business soon. What I want to do is actually send people to find the live location of where our truck is going to be at. And I actually have that on my website in this made up example. And so what I want to do is I want to take a URL. I want to create a short link for it, and I want to create a QR code that I can put right on this printed material that I'm going to fly around Chicago with and start slapping on every signpost everywhere I can. Everyone's going to get this QR code. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually go to the Bitly section of apps, which I already have connected to actually create this QR code. And I want to create a new one. And I'm going to point to a made up URL. So please don't scan this one. LukeBlackBeanBurgers.com. Look at that. Similar to what you can do within Bitly, I can actually customize the URL that I'm using for it. I'm going to use a Bitly one because that last name is pretty hard. So if I want people to actually type it in for this one, I'm going to use Bitly. I'm going to generate a QR code for it right within Canva. And what I can do is I can add some customizations. So I can have a logo. I can have a no logo for this one. I'm going to have no logo. And then I'm going to figure out a color. And anyone who is more creative than me and more into brand would be wincing at my way of choosing color, but I'm going to go on vibes. This one feels right. All right, so that color is going to sit on here, and I just click it to add it to my design. And because I don't want it to be too cumbersome, I'm going to add it here. And I actually want to put that URL here too, in case people aren't ready to scan. So this is the beauty of using Bitly for both your QR codes and your short links, is you can accomplish both. And so from there, I'm going to add in some text. And I'm going to find my QR code. Again, look at that. And I'm going to add bit.ly/. So I can enter this in here as well. So then right here is the QR code, the short link, if I want people to have it. Now, let's say I just want the QR code because I want more scans and to see how people are coming through. I might add this, and then my text that I add is going to be instructions. So I want people to know exactly what they will get when they scan this QR code. We talked a lot about QR codes being clear, being credible, and being compelling. Making sure that's compelling, that people actually want to scan, and to find Luke's location is what I'm going to put on this printed piece. I'm going to put that right next to my QR code. Again, no judgment on my design skills here, but this is a way that you can use QR codes really easily within your creative tech stack, including Canva, to actually do a lot more. This scan, or this QR code, is created and now available within my Bitly account, so I can see scans on it once I print, as is this short link. So a lot of great ways that you can use this. All right, we're going to stop our share. I know we are coming up on our time here, and I want to answer any additional questions that people have. First of all, yeah, let's get some black bean burgers. We're going to send them out to everyone who registered. No, we're not. But hey, if there's enough demand, maybe we'll have black bean burgers as, I don't know, some sort of giveaway down the road. We got some questions that came in, Juan, that I want to tee up to both of us. The first is Andy was asking about how far away a user can be when scanning a QR code from a presentation screen. I've found that users can scan pretty far away from the back of the room when using QR codes. So any feedback on size, distance, any best practices on like how to get high res or how to make sure that QR codes are really scannable?
Yeah, great question. Generally, the QR codes that we provide are all PNG, and you can also get them in SVG, but we recommend using PNG as they're the highest quality. And as far as the distance goes, your phone should be able to scan it from pretty far away. So if someone is giving a presentation at the front of the room and you're at the very back, let's say that's maybe 10 to 15 feet, you could be able to zoom in and scan that QR code with no problems.
Awesome, cool. Okay. Juan, you said save the QR code earlier in the conversation and long pull on it. Can you explain that a little bit more about what that means and how people can use QR codes that are both scannable, but also downloadable, maybe even clickable?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not exactly sure how it works on Android, so I can only speak to iPhone as I'm an iPhone user. But on iPhones, you can save the QR code if you see a picture of it somewhere, or if someone sends you an email, and you can save that to your photos. And once you go to your photos, if you're familiar with the long hold on iPhone, so similar to how on messages, you might long hold on a message to react to it in iMessage, you would do the same thing in Photos and long hold on that QR code, and you should be able to see a pop-up that tells you the link, and you can click on that link to go to that destination.
Yeah. That's helpful. We had some conversation in the chat too after the last one that you had answered around size and dimensions. I think one thing that I'm seeing within the conversation that folks are sharing with each other is like the resolution is really important. The more screenshots we take of things, the lower the resolution gets. So making sure if you can get to the original QR code itself and downloaded that is really important. And making sure that you test it before you put it on any printed materials. It's something I like to do. I feel like I'm holding up my phone to my computer all the time now just to scan and test these QR codes of, is it going to the right location? And is it scannable based on the different documents that I might put it in? For example, sometimes you think it is and you pull it into a bigger version and that becomes really grainy and harder to scan, right?
Exactly. One thing I do want to make sure is if you're going to make QR codes to put it on a flyer, put it on a label, or if you're going to create anywhere where you going to mass produce it, it's always helpful to make sure that you're creating the QR code, you're scanning it, and you're making sure that it's going to the right destination before you finalize, print it, and put it on a flyer.
Yeah, love that. All right. I know we are over our scheduled time, so I appreciate folks staying on. We're going to answer one or two more questions to make sure that we're being respectful of everyone's days. Here's a creative one. Kristen's wondering if QR codes can be made into a woven clothing label. So Juan, do you think they can be?
Definitely, yeah. As long as all the pips or the design is close enough, someone should be able to scan the QR code if it's on a piece of clothing.
What are pips? What is that?
Pips are those individual dots that you see on QR codes. It depends because currently you can create multiple various designs for QR codes. So some of them might not even be pips anymore. But originally, those pips were those little black dots inside the QR code. So
Awesome.
if you can differentiate those dots when you're sewing a piece of clothing, then I see no reason why someone should not be able to scan it.
Anything is possible. Cool.
Yeah.
We had kind of a use case that maybe we can riff on together of how people can accomplish this. So someone in the Q&A had asked, how can I create a QR code system to take attendance at meetings and events without having to purchase a conference app? So do you have I've got some ideas, but want anything top of mind of how you would have people be able to have check-in happen via QR code, not only easy to scan, but also easy to actually like either enter information or auto check in that person. Any ideas?
Yeah, great question. Something we're looking into is potentially coming up with some sort of feedback form or even a check-in form or any sort of form where a user can scan the QR code and input in that information, and we can present that information to you so that when you log into Bitly, you might be able to see, for example, who scanned the QR code to go check out the homework assignment. If it was a school and you're a teacher and you're sharing a QR code to a homework assignment, you'll now know which all of the students scanned the QR code and who did it. So that would be great for you to know.
Yeah, awesome. Can QR codes be holograms?
That's a great question. And I am gonna say they can. I see no reason why they can't be, but we currently have not seen any that I'm aware of.
All right, Kirsten, you need to be the one that creates the very first QR code hologram, and we want to see it. Okay, so share it with us. Share us with after the fact. Lilia dropped a really great example of QR code going to a Google form. So that again, I'll just reemphasize: the QR code is your way and your conduit, your opportunity to create connection with your customers or your audience. Where you send it is up to you, but making sure you think about the two experiences as you're creating it will make sure you get great results. So if you send folks to a Google form, is it really easy to fill out their information? Is it mobile optimized? Are you sending them to your app where they can automatically see, like Juan had talked about, the fitness classes or the QR code specifically that he scanned, they wants to track his exercises and his workout. Making sure you think about pre and post is going to be the best way to make sure that we aren't all looking at these pie in the sky examples of QR code creativity of like, oh, I can't create any AI generated art, or I don't have enough drones to light up the night sky, but I can make it really valuable for my audience by thinking creatively about where it goes and where it takes people to. We are, and I appreciate folks that stayed on. We're over our scheduled time. So with that, what I want to do is wrap up with kind of our next steps. First of all, thank you everyone for joining us. We're going to be hosting these conversations every single month. And the goal of these are for customers to connect with other customers and help create some examples and use cases. And so Pawan and I were chatting today. I highly recommend that anyone wants to join us on the virtual stage to talk about their experience, to share their best practices that they've found, to answer questions from the audience. We would love to host folks because it's really about making connections and all learning together. So you'll hear from me with the follow-up resources, number one, with the recording, with the resources we talked about today, like the data and trends report, the list of examples, how to connect Canva and Bitly, all the stuff we talked about. And anyone who did ask a question that we weren't able to get to today is going to get a follow-up from me. I'll make sure that I provide any context, be able to get into more specifics with you directly. And we're always here to help make sure that we're making these connections for you so we can start the conversation there. So first of all, thank you everybody for joining us today. I had a blast. Pawan, it was great to chat with you about all of this stuff and share some of the experiences we've heard, answer some questions. Any final parting thoughts for the audience of what they should think about when they want to get creative with QR codes?
No, just make sure that you have a clear destination in mind. And if you're sharing it somewhere outside, make sure that it's clear and visible for all the users.
And if you're going to create a hologram, send it to us because we want to see how it
Yeah.
works. Yeah. Awesome. Well, everyone can look for an email from us about midday today. So about 24 hours from now. If you have any questions, reach out to us. We're here and we'll make sure that everyone knows about the next upcoming session that we'll talk about in September. Thanks everyone for joining. Have a great rest of your day.
See you all.